everybody. This is Joanne Eisen. I need to come up with a better phrase than hi, everybody. I don't think I like that. But anyway, this is Joanne Eisen with Reach the Unlimited. And this is another week for us to explore. And I've got to catch this before I do the sound. There we go. Okay.
If you want to raise human consciousness, there has never been a better time.
All right. Well, I'm getting better at this YouTube thing. Clearly, I don't have it down yet, but okay.
Well, that was a really good new intro if you're looking for a new intro.
Right. I did like it. Okay. I'm going to go way off track. You and I are friends, so I'm going to talk with you a little more casually, but
Okay.
Thank you everybody for being here on Reach the Unlimited. I'm sorry for the hiccups there. But you know, it's live and there you go. But thank you all for being here. And I would like to welcome my very dear friend and mentor, Adrienne Cobb. And she has been with me many times before, and I just love talking with her every time she's here. So Adrienne, how are you? And thank you for being here.
Good. Yeah.
Can you introduce yourself to people and tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Adrienne Cobb, and I do intuitive readings with people and classes, and have a membership program to help people connect to their spiritual resources, their tribes of light, guides and counsels, really to help build momentum and energy and clarity towards people discovering their life purpose and their truer heart path.
Which you do amazingly well. And I have to say that as a person that has been working with you for a long time. I love your work. So if you guys are interested, you'll hear more about what she has to say, but she has her Wild Magic group, and we'll talk more about that later. So we have a specific topic, and I know that we were talking about our different bodies and how relationships all are affected with them or within them, especially the pain body. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that really means?
Yeah. So, trying to think of how to start with it. So basically, we, all have different experiences we have in our life and growing up in our own childhood and scenarios, and that's usually kind of our karmic life issues that we're going to end up dealing with, kind of throughout our life, and learning from them, hopefully. I'm a little slow on the intake, I'm afraid, with some of my learning, unfortunately, about some relationship stuff. But anyway, say it again.
So sorry, hold on. I'm still having technical issues here. I am so sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
I thought I had this down, but clearly I didn't. It was getting on. Okay, I am so sorry. Please go ahead.
That's okay. I was just rolling my eyes at myself about how I handle relationships and how I live them, ruin them, create them, destroy them, whatever. So it just it's definitely disheartening, I think, when we do engage in relationship stuff, and it can be going pretty well, and I think that we all mean well, and we start out with our best intention, and then based on childhood patterns, a lot of times we have things that come up out of our unconscious. And so the way I sort of see the pain body is that we oftentimes in our childhood, based on whatever we're experiencing, it becomes sort of our karmic life issue. It's the thing that our soul will be learning something from. And then if we don't know really how to deal with the things in our childhood, which oftentimes happens, then it gets stored. And it'll get stored in maybe what we call our pain body, which maybe we could also say the unconscious or the nervous system. There's probably different ways to say it. But I'm just going to call it kind of the pain body right now, because the pain body, let's say if you were looking at your energy field, if you were looking at mirrors, like if you were in an empty room looking at mirrors and you asked to see where your pain body is, you might notice it almost a little bit somewhere around your body, because it's something that you haven't fully integrated or owned or taken responsibility for. And it's a conglomeration of emotions and thought forms that maybe didn't really we just didn't handle that well, or maybe didn't have the resources for at the time. And that creates kind of a pain body. And then when we get older, what happens, and this is where sort of the problem arises, is that we might attract people that have similar type of wounds of maybe whether it's betrayal or whether it's rejection or abandonment or whatever it might be. And then we, because we have this pain body and we love this person we're with, and they love us, we'll oftentimes say, you hold some of my pain body and I'll hold some of your pain body. And then that kind of escalates depending on the depth of the relationship to maybe like, trauma bonding or other things. But anyway, so we sort of say, hey, if you'll help me with my pain body, I'll help you with yours. And it seems like a good idea up until it doesn't. So, and when it doesn't, it's like everything you were most afraid of happening happens. And, it's just disheartening, I mean, to say the least.
Well,
So
let's go back a little bit, because I don't know how people really understand how that works, or we have different bodies, right? We have our human body, and then we have the bodies that go out from that. Can you explain to people exactly how that works and why we're focusing specifically on the pain body? Because we can live in relationships that way, but maybe they don't understand what we're really talking about in the big scheme of things.
sure, yeah. Yeah, we do have like our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual body, right? And then let's say within the subset of our emotional body, we can have something called a pain body. And so it's basically where you have an accumulation of emotions or fears, insecurities, things that didn't get dealt with at some point in your life. And it kind of accumulates and it creates like its own elemental life force energy. It's not exactly an entity, it's just an elemental life force energy. And it has like its own, kind of a sense of its own feeling and thought to it in a rudimentary way. And, you know, when we're able to be present with ourselves and to our emotions, everything stays rolling and we can stay on the table and it's unconditionally loving and it's honest, it's trustworthy, it's a good aspect of us. And we can be in that place quite a lot, right? But then let's say, and I can just use a personal example, but basically for me, I was rolling along in my relationship and, overall doing fairly well. I think it was, better than I'd ever done before. And it was really great. And I loved it. Right. And then something along the way caused a trigger. And it wasn't really about the person, that I'm in relationship with. I mean, something happened, it was a trigger, but it really wasn't them. And it was something that caught in my own nervous system about my past. And when it got caught, it might have even taken, a couple years to kind of play itself all the way out. But once a pattern gets triggered out of the pain body, it's like you start playing it out. It's almost like you're two different people. I mean, it's the most bizarre thing. And I know it sounds crazy or it sounds stupid or it sounds whatever, but because you have your love body, and that's what I'm going to compare it to. So when we're interacting just, on a good place and neither of us are very triggered, we're in our love body. And that's a very beautiful thing, right? But if something gets triggered in this person or that person, and usually it will trigger both people, then the pain body gets engaged. And it's like this alter ego, this alter side of you kind of comes forward. And what it's seeking is to be healed. And I feel like the thing that heals the pain body ultimately is unconditional love and acceptance. And so what happens is, when the pain body gets triggered with whatever memory, whatever trigger it was, we tend to project it onto the person that we love, that we're playing it out with, for them to unconditionally love and accept us. We'll start pushing the boundaries. We'll start doing things that just trigger and trigger and trigger and trigger to see, oh, do you still unconditionally love me and whatever. And so what happens is that, and it's crazy making. It's crazy making once one of the pain bodies with either or both people get triggered, right? But what happens is that if I came back into knowing how to be in unconditional love and acceptance for myself, then what I'm doing is I'm taking my pain body and I'm absorbing it back in a way. I'm learning my soul lessons from it, my soul wisdom, and then I start thinking from a more clear place and I evolve. I evolve, I have more compassion, more understanding, more unconditional love for the person I'm with now, right? But if the fear is still playing out, then we just do more and more agitating things or stupid things or triggering things or disrespectful things.
Mhm.
Um, because we're just so sure the story in our head, which is crazy making, is true.
Mhm.
And so then we become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it
Yeah.
destroys relationships and it's destroyed mine. So, it's just not a very fun thing. And hopefully, like I said, at the end of the day, if you can, this is what I'm personally working on, but if I can keep, breathing in, having unconditional love and acceptance for my own pain body, I don't need to play it out with somebody. So I'm not going to set them up to basically trigger it, or set them up to fail or set me up to fail.
Mhm.
And what happens is when you integrate it, it transfers the energy back into the love body.
Mhm.
And that's really where you want it. You want to keep transferring your pain body to your love body, integrating and doing that. Right. Um,
Well, I want to bring back to what you said, this happened to me. It happens to all of us. This is a pattern that I think it's a subconscious thing that we're unaware that we're
it's
picking up these
subconscious.
things.
That's why it's so crazy making.
Yes, right. So it's like we all have these triggers that will bring us into our old story. And that's what you're talking about, going into that more self-love, compassionate, emotion to yourself. Because I love what you said at the end. It's all about what we learn through it. That's the point, is when either way that we go, because we all will have the times that we're triggered and the times that we will be more in having self-compassion, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about
Well, so one of the danger spots is that sometimes when we are triggered by something and it's coming out of the subconscious and we really think it's real,
mhm,
what I mean? We really think
exactly,
this is what the reality is, or this is what's happening, or this is what's going on. And you don't realize, or I don't realize how much of a mistake I'm making, let's say, until uh, it starts to unwind, and still it starts to unravel finally,
right,
and then when it unravels, you're like, oh my God, what did I do? How could I have treated this person this way? How could I have said
right,
this? How could I have done this? Why did I do this? You see what I'm
right,
saying? It's like, and you really, you don't, like, you don't mean to do those things. It's almost like being on the outside of yourself, watching,
mhm,
knowing that this is not a good idea to be acting this way, but still having a hard time uh, stopping it because the emotions of the
mhm.
unconscious have their own pull to it.
Right. And
And
that's
so,
the key. Somebody said here it's enabling each other, but it really is the emotion. Sharon said that. Well, we have a lot of Sharons here though. It is the emotion. We do. We have two Sharons. Hi, Sharons. Uh, we have the emotion that's pulling us. And that's something that sometimes we don't understand that we can control. We have control of what we allow our emotions to do.
yeah, yeah, we do. I mean, the only problem is, like, once the story gets rolling,
Right.
it just, it's like, what it is it's a blind spot. So
Right.
yes, we do have control of our emotions and we do have control of our thoughts to the best of our ability.
Mhm,
But once we hit these blind spots, and like I said,
mhm,
the blind spot of an unconscious issue has its own sort of life force to it, its own set of thought forms, its own
yeah,
set of emotions. And
mhm,
once it gets rolling, it kind of creates a life of its own. It creates this entire story that isn't necessarily even true. Um, that is got its own deal going on with it. You know what I mean? And it's so it's uh
What
it's
What
go
are
ahead.
some things like, because I know this happens to me a lot where I believe this story. I mean, I'm a big one for, challenge your stories, challenge your beliefs, because you never know what is really yours and what's not. And really, there's so much of what we do in our life that's kind of autopilot, right? So, what do we do in a situation where we're living in that kind of trigger pattern? And we know, like you said, we could be the observer seeing we're making these steps, but no, this isn't a wise thing to do. We're playing out the story again. How do we trigger or stop that trigger and wake ourselves up to maybe this isn't a good idea?
Well, I mean, there's a few things. One is, I think that one of the most powerful ones is coming into a one heart breath with our own higher presence, divine presence, I am presence, cosmic Christ presence, source energy, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
I call it cosmic Christ presence, but a lot of people like divine presence.
Hmm.
And you do a one heart breath. And what you do is, it is very centering. And what you do is you just, you're calling forth your divine presence to come down before you. And you're just going into a one heart breath with it. And what you do is you imagine as that presence, that higher presence comes down to you. You don't go up to it, you bring it down to you. And you lean in with your left shoulder. And as you are, you kind of go into like giving it a hug and being hugged by it.
Hmm.
Well, I've been doing this for months, right? So um, so at first, the feeling tone was more out of my inner child, and it was feeling safe and protected. That's what I mostly felt when I felt held in this in presence. But that was really what was most triggered from my childhood, is not feeling safe or protected, right? And then before long, I noticed it went from safe to protected just recently into feeling unconditional love and acceptance. And once I got to unconditional love and acceptance, something changed. And all of a sudden, the thing that's been, maybe sort of a trigger for me for months, all of a sudden, once I got to unconditional love and acceptance, I felt like I could start to see more clearly again. I felt like something started to unravel that I just could not unravel before. I mean, it just, when you're caught in the pattern, it makes me feel kind of stupid for one, because it's not like I don't know better. I do this with people for a living, but when I get caught in my own story, I'm like, oh my God, I just feel stupid, especially by the time I get to the other side of it. And by that time, so much harm has been done, so much has been said, so much has been done, that it's just, now I just feel hopeless. It just feels irreparable. You know what I mean? And so you also want to make sure you don't go too far into the hopelessness part of it, because it's not helping either.
Right. I
So
love that you said that.
unconditional love and acceptance
Mhm.
will, if you can sit in the feeling of it,
Mhm.
it will literally start to unravel the
Mhm.
pattern way more quickly. I just wished I knew that part of it
Mhm.
months ago.
Mhm.
You live and learn, I
Well,
guess.
yeah, we learn. And I love that you're talking about that. That's your experience and what you went through, because you're learning like the rest of us are. And you're fantastic at what you do. So there's no question about that. But the one thing that I found when I started working with that one heart breath was that on a energetic level, I would hug I would do the embrace, but quickly go into the ethers, because that's where I like to reside. Just like, let's go
Yeah,
into the heavens and be there. But what I realized is that I was missing a very important part. So I wanted to go back to that, because that's something that I learned as we were going through that work with the group that we were working with, is that by me rushing out of it, I wasn't really connecting to that higher self, that embrace. And that's a part of that unconditional love
it
that
is.
we don't feel enough of. And so I want to encourage people to practice this, but also sit in that time of having that embrace with your higher self. It's so healing.
It really is quite healing, because it gives the inner child something that it's never had before,
Mhm.
in that way. And what happens is, when we get into relationships, I want you to save me, and I'm willing to save you. And so
Mhm.
the minute we enter into that paradigm, which again, sometimes we don't even mean to,
Yeah.
it goes into, at some point, we're going to have to end up playing out, well,
Mhm.
I'm going to save you, but then you're not going to like how I save you. So now I feel like I'm the victim, because now you're accusing me to be the perpetrator.
Mhm.
Well, and over here, so it's like, it's just a cycle, and both people in the relationship will play out all three
Yes.
characteristics, and we don't mean to, but that's part of the conditional love and
Mhm.
part of the inner child phenomena that goes on.
Mhm.
And so when you start switching your entire inner thinking from from conditional love to unconditional love, it opens up a window of an entirely new technology, an entirely new way to be. But as it's healing, it can be really messy.
Mhm.
And sometimes, I just feel like, I don't know, kind of hurt people along the way, or we get hurt along the way. It's kind of this weird thing that happens as we're sort of unraveling.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that none of us mean to do that. We don't. Like at the end of the day, I know we all love each other. That's really what it comes down to always. But in the process of the unraveling, it's this thing. And so when you bring it back to the unconditional love and acceptance, your inner child starts to heal from that one piece just by going into the one heart breath and
Mm-hmm.
feeling unconditional love and acceptance. You start calling your pain body back to you, and then you take the pressure off the other person, and you take the projections off, and you take the blaming off, and you take the guilt off. You take all these things off the minute you start owning your own um, pain body with unconditional love and acceptance. Then the other piece that's really, really cool, because sometimes the burden of it is so heavy. Like the reason we want to share the load with somebody is because it's a very heavy burden to the heart and the soul to carry, whatever it is we've had going on in our life, right? And so once you start calling it back into unconditional love and acceptance, you really want to allow the toxicity of it, the burden of it, the excess emotions of it, to give it to the earth, because the earth is like the earth like takes on the compost of our humanity in a way, our humanness, and it knows how to transmute that energy back to something positive and good. And if you try to take on the pain body, um, unconditional love and acceptance helps to bring back the soul's wisdom. But then whatever is excess of that, you want to let it go into the earth so that you're not walking around carrying that burden either.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it just becomes, you just wonder why you even bother living.
That's pretty big despair too. And I think that is a part of, a lot of people get into that part of that deep despair. And that's where reaching out and asking for help, for one, is a big thing, because a lot of, like we were talking about earlier, it's patterns that we don't realize that we have learned, that have been ingrained in us. And maybe not just this lifetime, but many more lifetimes.
Right.
So it's important to reach out for help, because you can unlearn it. It takes a process. And one is the awareness of it. And two is self-compassion and love for self, not in a way, because I can, I always go back into my problems of
We all do, right? Yep, we all
it's
do.
not selfish. It's really an amazing, as we've gone through our journey together, the way that I see self-love now is so completely different, but I still do trigger back into that, you're being selfish and whatever I was being taught. But it really is important, because if we don't learn to have that self-compassion and that self-love, then we're going to easily go back into situations like that.
Right. Yeah, totally. And it takes a tremendous amount of love,
Mm-hmm.
not only for yourself, but sometimes between two people
Mm-hmm.
to go into the deepest pain that's there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so it really does take a tremendous amount of love. You know what I mean? Like I
And,
know with, in my relationships, there hadn't have been that much love,
mm-hmm.
there wouldn't be this much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And that sucks to kind of say
Yeah.
it really does. But at the end of the day, I always try to remind myself that the love is really the predominant thing. It's the thing that's most important. And we just pray that we can heal and get through it and come to the other side, a little more wise and a little more compassionate and loving, you know what I mean, is a good way to do that. So,
Well,
yeah.
I do think that what you said is really important to kind of pinpoint again about how like we're talking about a relationship that there's two people involved. You could be talking about a family relationship, or a relationship with partners, or a relationship in work.
Yeah.
But you're people that are trying to come together, and you all really, I think for the most part, we all, like you said, have that genuine love for each other. But we have our own baggage to bring along the way. And when we draw people in that are going to be able to help us play that out. And if we can understand that, then we can go through it a little better.
Right. Yeah. And, if one person can stay untriggered while somebody's going through their issue, that's helpful.
Yeah.
But by the time both people get triggered, it just complicates it so much more. It takes a little bit more to unravel it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because it's hard,
Yeah.
for somebody to be spinning out doing whatever they're doing and it not eventually get to the other person. How is that?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And
Yes.
and I'd say sometimes the unconscious almost, it's like it's almost um kind of projecting, provoking, whatever, to play something out.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't really think that we mean harm when we're playing stuff out with people as much as we're trying to heal something.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the problem is we're wanting this person to be the a saintly figure of so much unconditional love that it's almost unrealistic,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just simply, I mean, a person can only take so much kind
Yeah.
of bullshit along the way, basically,
Right.
and once they've just had it, it's kind of hard, right? But the key is that if, let's say, I could have more unconditional love and acceptance for my pain body and my issues,
Mm-hmm.
then I would not have to provoke this person, that person, this situation to play it out at the level that matches my childhood, which was super intense.
Mm-hmm.
It was no child's play. There was, no pun intended, with that.
Though. Well, for me, that's what I'm doing. All the work that I'm doing, it's going back into my childhood and trying to figure out now who I am because, like I said, and I've talked a lot even on this channel about how, we just have these old stories that are not true, that we just did not, we learned, we weren't born with them. They weren't inherited to us. I didn't say
Which
that right, but
which
I
part
love,
was inherited?
I'm sorry.
Which part wasn't inherited? These
the
life skills?
these lies, these falsehoods about who we are, what, and it's not like our parents, our parents always get a bad rap, but it's not
They do.
like our
I don't
parents.
think anything about, yeah, it's nothing,
It's not personal. And like
no,
Sharon
not at all.
said, it's a method of healing within yourself. It is doing that. It's going with it because nothing that anybody ever does to us is necessarily on purpose, right? It's just they're playing out their stories. But how we react to it, we're responsible. It's always not personal either. It's just them playing out their stories and we're playing out ours. So if we can stay in that place and understand that, yes, it is a form of self-healing.
Well, and it's raising our vibration to the bar of unconditional love, and that had been my commitment. But in order to get there,
Mhm.
there's like no way around it except for through it. And in going through whatever it was to get to the unconditional love,
Yes.
that's where I really hit some major issues
Mm-hmm.
inside myself. You know what I mean? Like it's a whole new way of being. And it's like the opposite of unconditional love would be basically all the pain you've ever felt, all the fear you've ever felt, all the unresolved conflict you've ever felt, all stored in this like elemental life force energy that we would call a pain body. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you want to say, oh, sure, come on home, come on home. We would love to have you come back home to my heart now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great. But it's gonna bring out, it can bring out all the things that we've never dealt with that are now all of a sudden rushing to the surface to come out and just wanting to be heard. And I know all of us wish that we could do better at that. All of us wish that we could.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's clumsy, it's messy, it's hurtful, it's childish, it's unconscious. I mean, I could just go on, and it's crazy. I could go on and on about that list. And you just have to stay present with it, and I don't
Well,
know, try to clean up the pieces on the other side the best we can.
I think that what I've learned through the process is just staying within my own lane, in my own now, in my own presence, like you said, and realize that it's not personal, as hard as that can be. It's not personal, but that you're learning through this because I know for me and the experience that I went through, I'll never do that one again. I learned that
Right.
one through this last lesson so well that when I see, you know, shenanigans coming towards me, I just hightail it the other way. I don't even have to ask questions. The other thing about it, though, is honoring who you are and not being made to feel ashamed or guilt about you standing into your truth. That's a big one.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, true. I mean, yeah, I think sometimes what happens is when the pain body starts integrating, you start standing up for yourself and you start wanting to do things different. You're
Mhm,
playing it out with the people closest to you, which sometimes aren't even necessarily trying to play that out with you. You know what I mean?
mhm,
It's just the people closest to us we tend to do that with. And so, it's you know, it definitely uh takes a lot of forgiveness, I think,
mhm,
most of all with ourselves.
mhm.
You know what I mean? It's like
Big.
really not even with other people, but really mostly in ourselves
Mhm,
in terms of, you know, trying to get to the other side of something that, and I do think that with our childhood, the more intense it is, just to say this, that the more intense and the more kind of messed up it is, it matches the intensity and the depth of our love and what
mhm,
we're evolving. So I do not think that the more messed up our childhood is the more messed up we are, as
mhm.
much as the crazier things are and the intensity of whatever has gone on in our childhood, it matches the evolution of our soul, being able to love at an even deeper level sometimes. You know what I mean? So
Huh,
I'm definitely not blaming our childhood on
right.
any immense, just to be clear about that. I just think that I know for me, what I experienced in the childhood and what I've recently played out
Mhm,
um, in, my relationship,
mhm,
uh, it has brought me to the greatest understanding of love and compassion I've
mm.
ever known. And it was, you know, I've unfortunately kind of destroyed a lot, I think, along the way to get there. And I think a big part of it is how afraid we are of the love.
Yes, that's a big one. Mhm,
That is really what exceeds. If our pain body was already integrated, when somebody wanted to love us,
mhm,
we would let them love us and we would love them. It would be okay, right? But the bigger the pain body is, the
mhm,
more we want to be loved by them,
mhm,
and love them as well. And
mhm.
then what happens is that when the pain body gets triggered, we go into the stories of how unlovable and unworthy we are, which was there from the beginning, way before any of these other people came to our life, right?
Mhm.
Way down at that level. And it's the golden opportunity to actually come back to healing the deep level of unworthiness that I think all of us carry. And the deeper the love, the harder we fall,
Yeah, I
you
agree.
know.
Yeah.
But what's falling is the ego. Like
Ex
where I've acted out, where I've done stuff has been,
Mhm,
my ego is so incredibly, I would say, majorly sophisticated to have survived my childhood issues
mhm,
and the crisis went on. So, and it may not be that I'm a very egotistical person, like ego the way we're thinking about it, but
mhm,
very ego oriented in terms of my survival. So my survival skills are huge, right?
mhm.
So, and that's great. You know what I mean? Maybe it did help me get through childhood or whatever, right? But at some point, it's my greatest folly. And
Yeah.
so the place I play out the greatest pain is with the person I love the most.
Mhm.
And that's where we tend to go with that. And so, if we allow ourselves to stumble, to fall, just flat on our face, which, there can probably be no, sometimes I just don't know if there's another way around. Like, I wish that there was a more graceful way to sometimes, let's do rebirthing, let's do deep
Mhm,
breathing, let's do, and they,
mhm,
all of those things are great.
mhm.
But sometimes based on our experiences, because we're in human form, there's no way around it but to play something out. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
I really love trying to find things that will help not to have to basically act like a real asshole in my life with people that I love. I would really love not to ever have to do that again. Um, but sometimes because we're in human form,
Right.
that's the name of the game. And I think sometimes falling flat on our face
Mhm.
is sometimes the most direct way to come back to love. And it sucks. It's horrible,
Right. But
but
it the human experience. And it's kind of cliche to say that, but it is the human experience. And that's what we're here to do, is do
And
that.
otherwise, this is what I find for people who aren't willing
Mhm.
to maybe risk love, risk being in love,
Yes,
and
yeah.
risk speaking truth, and risk um, telling their feelings, and risk
Mhm,
making mistakes, and risk being an asshole, and risk
mhm,
all the things that go along with it. You
mhm.
never ever get to the other side of an authentic love. And
And that's
it's a
important
mess.
because
Yeah.
we had somebody here who said, that's why I live by myself. And I agree 100% with you, Sharon, because I'm not ready to risk it. And that's the key, is that relationships are teaching us this. And the another Sharon, no, it was the same Sharon. I can see why you said that, because your past is similar, but she has experienced a lot of trauma when she was younger. What do you think was the biggest thing to help you to, because you've come a long way. What do you think helped you to
Are you talking
overcome
to
your
Sharon,
child?
or are you talking to Sharon or me?
No, you.
Um, I'd say the biggest thing that's helping me clean things up
Mhm,
inside myself
mhm,
is that going into a one heart breath with my own higher presence.
mhm,
Um, that's because I will start to spin out, and then I'll do that, and it'll calm me down, and I'll spin out, and it becomes less and less spinning out.
mhm,
It reminds me more of what the truth of love really is, which
mhm,
is what I'm coming back to, um, and that one piece, I think, in our human existence is the one responsibility all of us would have, is to
mhm,
keep coming back to ourself and our divinity, and to have that, like, that's the thing I am would be committed to it most of my life. That's
mhm,
the greatest love. That's the thing that if I can own that, it would allow me, or it does allow me, to have cleaner relationships with people.
mhm,
And then yeah, so I think that that one piece, and knowing that we all deserve more unconditional love, I do think that that helps to keep us out of the projections. And going back to what Sharon was saying, is that I agree that by being in relationships, there's only so much you can learn when you're in a relationship that you can't learn when you're by yourself.
right.
And there are certain things that you cannot learn when you're in relationship that you can only learn when you're by yourself.
Yes, I agree.
So, and I think there's a balance to that. And what I do see people doing is, when because they have childhood issues, or because they have a bad experience with love, they don't want to risk again. That's a real common one I find with people. And
Mhm,
I really think that's a big pitfall. Like, I'd rather make all the mistakes in the world I'm going to make, knowing that love is always the most important thing, and get back into it again from a better place. Like, I had always rather keep trying, and again, having alone time or whatever, like, again, it can be healing, but
mhm.
I would never want to just quit or stop trying, if it's possible.
And
With
there's
the people
nothing
in my
wrong
life.
with staying alone. I don't know that I would choose not to stay alone now in this part of my life, at least right
There's
now. I
nothing
don't
wrong
know
with it.
what's ahead of
Yeah,
me right now. So
yeah.
there's nothing
And it doesn't have to be a partnership. It could be the
right,
way you're choosing to love with your
right.
kids, your grandkids, or your service work. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I just think that once we get hurt, to withdraw from love is not gonna serve our soul's evolution, and it doesn't really make us happy at the end of the day.
I
So,
agree with you. But there,
however,
like you said, there's
choose
ways
to
to do it.
express. Yeah,
There's always ways to do it. Like, like you said, doing service work, volunteering somewhere, there's so many ways to do it. And I'm with you, Sharon. I learn a lot. I've learned a lot about myself. Sharon was just saying that each time I live by myself, I learn more of who I am. And I agree with that. You do learn about who you are. Uh,
yeah.
but the biggest teacher to us is to be in a relationship with another person, because then we're mirroring, we're working off of each other, we're being triggered by each other, and we're really learning a lot about what we're here to learn.
Well, and I think it's cool, you know, to be able to go to that next level of whatever that next expression of love is too. And however you're choosing to express love, right? But there's always, it's, love is endless, love is infinite. You
Yes.
can never get, you know what I mean? It's like, it's something that's always evolving. As long as we don't put a stopper on it, it's something that's always evolving itself.
Yes, it is, definitely. And, we know intuitively, I think internally, we know when it's time to have another relationship or when we're just really needing that time to be like right now, I need this time to just be me.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and that's perfectly fine to do that. But
Oh,
it
absolutely. It
is,
comes in cycles. Yeah.
I do agree with you that going back to self and really knowing that inner true self, which a lot of people don't really take the time to do, that is where I think the real healing does come from.
And you can do that. That's the coolest thing. So when you do the one heart breath and you're coming back in, whether you're in relationship or not in relationship, whether you're working in community or not working in community, whether you are a complete hermit or you're out traveling the world, it does not matter. As long as you keep doing that one heart breath with yourself,
Mhm.
you're coming back to that sacred union no matter what. And that's how you can, I feel like that's how we stay the truest to ourselves, as we navigate life, whether we're alone or with people or the myriad of things that we can do. And it
Right.
wouldn't preclude any of it. So then I wouldn't be afraid to be in a relationship because I haven't lost myself.
Right.
And I wouldn't be afraid to be alone, that I have to be in a relationship because I have myself. You see what I mean? So because some people will swing from one side of being a
Mhm.
serial monogamous type thing, or one, or they only want to ever be alone, or maybe they just want to date. There's all these different things, right? But once you have that relationship with that divine part of you, it's like it always kind of guides you through the feeling tone of what's actually real. And in um and it helps you get through the illusions, because the problem is with the pain body is that it's so clouded with the illusions and
Mhm.
the projections. And that's what's so crazy making about it, is because sometimes when you're in the depth of the feeling, the story seems so real that
Yes.
you can't, it's like you almost have to live through it to get to the other side of it. And sometimes we never get to the other side of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've played stuff out before, you know what I mean? But this time I feel like I've slowed down enough. I really practiced over the last, year and a half, to stop running away from myself. And so this time when I fell on my face, hit the wall, destroyed the things I've loved, um, I
Something
was
happened with your microphone.
oh,
I'm not hearing you as well.
is that any better?
A little better.
Okay. So all I was saying is that once,
There
at
you go.
this time, okay, once at this time around, like over the last year and a half, 2 years, I've really tried to stop running away from myself, whether that's been moving or traveling or overworking. There's a lot of things I'll do, right?
Uh,
And so this time, when I got to the relationship cycle that I will hit at a certain point in time, I didn't run away.
mhm.
In other words, I didn't move, I didn't run away, I didn't walk away. And so when I hit that much pain, and it's taken time to sit with it, to let it unravel,
Yeah.
but it's been very different. And it's through that I think it's through feeling
Mhm.
the pain that maybe I've caused the other person, or feeling the loneliness or the pain inside me. Like it's a combination, but
Mhm.
by feeling my way through it, um, it allows it to actually heal in a way that I've never slowed down to heal it before. And the reason I'm slowing down and not just trying to rush past it and go off to the next thing or whatever is because of the one heart breath is keeping me centered enough
Mhm.
to not want to run away from the pain, which of course adds the pain body. Instead, I'm like, okay, well, this is what's happened. This is what I've done. This is what I thought. This is what was, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's a process of unraveling it. Um, I saw this amazing video just recently, and it was on Greg Braden. And I hope it's in my YouTube files because I want to get back to find it again, because I didn't get to watch the whole thing. But he has actually, I've always wished that somebody could calculate this. It's a calculator based on your age and based on the traumas that you had in your childhood, that it does the phi, PHI, it does the phi, and it will calculate when you are going to have these major traumatic events in your life, like relationships fall apart or
Uh-huh.
jobs fall apart or financial things happen.
Yeah.
And so for him, it's like he was 11 when his dad left. And when his father left, um, his mother became a single parent and all that kind of stuff. So when he puts it into his formula, which I think he offers it for free on his website,
Mm-hmm.
you take a trauma from childhood, you put your age in, and then it helps you to calculate through phi um, the next age that would probably play out.
Yeah.
Like for me, after watching this video just this recent weekend,
Wow.
after watching the video, I was thinking about different traumatic events that could have occurred, but
Yeah.
the one that was most present was when my parents got divorced and what actually caused the divorce.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it was a misunderstanding of a
Mm-hmm.
sort. And because that misunderstanding, and there was other issues or whatever, but with that misunderstanding, I realized in my current, my recent relationship that I took that recent misunderstanding that my parents had
Mm-hmm.
and created a divorce. I created the same problem. And I looked at that and I'm like, oh my God, like so much has kind of unraveled in the last couple of weeks, but
Uh,
it's amazing that he created this calculator. So I'd highly recommend going in and finding that calculator because he told me, well, I lost this relationship here and I lost this best friend here and I lost this job here. And they totally correlated to his calculator. And
uh-huh.
so this is the most important part because you could do your whole life playing with the
Right.
calculator. He said,
Right.
this is what stopped it. And this is like, it gave me some sense of hope, right? Is that he says that once you realize the pattern and what really was upsetting you, what was bothering you, and you can forgive it, you forgive it most of all in yourself. It's not really about, but you finally forgive it in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was that occurred. He's like, it's like the DNA spiral. He says it stops it on the DNA spiral. And then now you start a new one based on whatever you've learned to
Mm-hmm.
create a new future in relationship, in money, in work, and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh,
Amazing.
and he does a lot of emotional intelligence work. He works a lot with heart math. I really respect Greg Braden a lot, not only for his spiritual aptitude, but
Mm-hmm.
also, and I just think he's a very good person, but also for his scientific background, you know,
Yeah.
is pretty amazing. And he blends the two worlds super well to where they just really make a lot of sense. And so it did give me hope
Mm-hmm.
that this is just not going to be a forever life cycle of, you know, you know,
I think
destroying things.
I think we're just learn as we're going along. And I did Sharon had mentioned that she wondered if astrology had any impact on it. And I agree with you, Sharon. I think it probably did. But that we all love Gray Braden. He's amazing. But that calculator would be really helpful. But I agree with what you're saying about the end result. That's really the most important part.
Yeah, and it all came down to in the heart being able to
That
have unconditional love and acceptance for self
is the most
and
important.
forgiveness.
Mhm,
Once you see what you've done and you see even what everybody's done, you and other people, everybody,
mhm.
it's like this sense of just really the depth of forgiveness and
Yeah,
knowing at the end of the day, it's like, I love you.
right.
I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you.
Yeah.
But most importantly, I love you.
Mhm. And if you guys don't know what she just said, it's the Ho'oponopono prayer, and it's a very healing prayer. If you're going through traumas and problems, it's something that can really help to calm you down
When it does help to clear energy
and
between,
clear energy. Yes, that too.
and just, blessing people, there's a lot of things you can do that helps. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
But until you get to that level of just self-love with your own pain body, in order to get to the place to even know what you're forgiving within yourself. You know what I mean? What caught me off guard is I didn't realize the depth of what had triggered me. I didn't realize the depth of it. I kept wanting to be better than that.
Yes.
Kept trying to say things were better than that and things will be, whatever. But it's insidious and it's, it just lays low, but it keeps sort of playing on the back of your mind until things start to blow up. And so it just, yeah, you know what I mean? And it can't help but to recause the same pain that originated it. You know what I mean? And love, I feel, is the only thing, is the greatest healer in the universe, but it's going to require self-love before it can grow into a new expression in your life. And
I think that is the biggest key to this entire conversation is having real self-love, because sometimes we think we have self-love, but the more that we work at truly understanding that, we can see that we don't, because we can always go deeper, we can always go farther and really learning and loving ourselves.
yeah, and it's a process, especially if you didn't like learn certain things as a child. It's a process because the mistake, I don't know if I'd call it a mistake. It's probably just a learning curve, but the learning curve I had was because I never said things when I was younger and I
Mhm,
never stood up for things. I thought that how I was healing things was to say something or to stand up or to voice
mhm,
whatever.
mhm.
But I realized and maybe that was just a learning curve that maybe is good to have that capacity. But I think what I did was I swung on the pendulum and took it way too far in terms of what I thought I was standing up for or about in myself. It was so much of my own childhood versus this person.
Right.
And in the process of that, I swung on the pendulum, and it was just a lot of stuff I should have said many, many years ago versus to this person, right? And so then um, I realized, wow, well, really the deeper self love would have been uh, maybe honoring my feelings about things, but also having greater compassion with myself and the person. The standing up part might have been an aspect of it, but quite honestly, that was really old things that I was trying to stand up against. It wasn't present day stuff as much.
Mhm,
And so it was really, gosh, having compassion and choosing love over fear
mhm.
really would have been self loving.
I
And
think
so
that
now I'm
needs to
sitting
be,
here, you know, with the realization of that.
I
And
think the title of this should be choose love over fear, because that's really what we're doing each day is choosing
yeah,
love over fear, because we live a lot of our life and choices we make are not standing up. Because I'm the same with you. There were many years I thought I was in this wonderful, happy marriage. Everything was great, as the whole foundation was nothing but sand and craziness. And I knew that. And I think one of the things for me was the definition of insanity. I started thinking about that definition. If you do the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results. And that's what I was getting. But I wasn't ready to kind of start digging out the foundation and rebuilding it. So you have to have compassion and self-love for yourself. And Sharon had also hit a really important part by if you were really totally healed, then you wouldn't get so irritated with people, you wouldn't get so triggered. And that's really a true statement. But I don't know how we get better and better at that. I don't know that we ever really are totally healed as we are human beings.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think if we just boil it down to saying, that we're love, at the bottom of it,
Hmm.
that would go really far, I think. And I just, yeah. And I think that the more empathic we are and the bigger
Yeah.
we love,
Yeah.
in general, the bigger our hearts, the bigger we love, the more empathic we are, um, the more we have experience that might have added to the pain body. Sometimes the harder we fall and maybe take people down with us along the way. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, and,
Too well.
yeah, and how to, again, like I said, one of the things I've learned is that, wow, if I had been able to choose the love that was being offered
Uh-huh.
instead of afraid of the love,
Right.
and the fear of the love had nothing to do with the person as much as it did the childhood belief systems and
Hmm.
all the stories, right?
Yep.
You
Totally.
know, and a lot has healed that is I've never been able to get to. So I'm super grateful. I think that gratitude goes a long way as well. Of just, no matter, what happens, I'm eternally grateful.
Mhm.
And, you know, uh, for the experience or, the person and the people in my life that have helped me to uh, be on journey and maybe to, fall flat on my face. You know what I mean? And I think, and if I spent so much of my life running away from the pain body that this is the first time I've actually stopped to slow down to actually try to be present with it. And, and it's hard. I mean, I've still jumped in and out of my
Mhm.
own avoidance or escapism of it.
And I think that's a pretty natural thing to do because it's uncomfortable. And, I've done the same thing in my journey is, get away from it as fast as I possibly can. But the more that we can embrace it, it goes back to what Sharon said, that we can be in a situation and not be irritated because we're going to understand better what's going on. We see the bigger picture. We also have more compassion and self-love for ourselves. So we don't feel like we have to, because don't you feel like a lot of it comes from one, fear, and two, worthiness? Like you have to prove yourself or you,
Worthiness is a huge part
yeah,
of it. I mean, one of the things that I've been kind of studying release recently is like, there's the self-love piece, and the self-love builds into like maybe we do start to say something, or we start to ask for something, or we start to express ourselves.
Mhm.
And then that builds into self-worth. Oh, okay, that could be good for our relationship. That could be good for my life, right? Um, and then sometimes, and I think that's where we can swing on the pendulum to go maybe too far with it for how much we didn't do so many years of our life, and then all of a sudden we swing way out with it. But then the third part is that we then, once the self-love builds into the self-worth, then the third part of it, which I think sometimes we don't realize, is that then we actually deserve to be loved.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I would say I'm still working on that one. You know what I mean? Like it's still kind of a building process. Um, yeah, but deserving, I think, is a key word that actually allows us to uh, accept something or do something different. To do something different so that we don't get stuck.
Yeah, I agree. Hi, Johnny. Thanks for being here. Yes, pain is the best teacher we can have. It's going to really wake us up if we don't pay attention to it.
Really wig us out along the way, unfortunately.
Well, everything you said, though, goes still back to the most important thing is having self-compassion because we're going to make those mistakes. We're going to go down those roads. And ultimately, from whatever the self-worthy or the lack of, or whatever we're going to come for that weakness within us, the only way that we're going to heal that is still going to come right back to that one heart breath and really knowing our inner being, really understanding who we are as a soul.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of the way like the way you leave yourself is the way you have to come back home to yourself. And
Hmm.
so when you're trying to heal the pain body or integrate it or whatever,
Hmm.
or move from conditional love to unconditional love, any of these big changes,
Hmm.
you're going to have to go through the door you left yourself through in a way, right? Because we left ourselves when we couldn't deal with some of the stuff in our childhood, right? And
Right.
so you're going to act it out similar to what
Hmm.
we did in childhood. Like, for instance, I've really come to the, awareness of like my father's mental illness was probably extreme bipolar, fast moving bipolar, but nobody ever identified it quite as that. And I knew there was craziness, right? So as I'm hitting my deepest pain over my parents' divorce and just the loss and everything that brought it up to that, over this period of time, I've probably acted a little bipolar. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, you'll act out what you learned as a child. And
Yes.
and it's and so if somebody was depressed or they had depressed parents, then
Hmm.
maybe it would play it out through that. If somebody had parents that, died or whatever, so people play it out a lot of times as to what they learn in their childhood. And it's not necessarily who they are, but it is how they learned
Hmm.
about love and emotions when they were little. And it's very difficult not to play out that level of immaturity when you're trying. And that's, I think, a lot of reasons why people stay in denial and they don't do this is because it is messy as shit. It is very, very messy. And
Oh my gosh.
we put everything on the line for it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and lose everything oftentimes in doing it. And uh
But I feel like it's so worth it in the end because it really doesn't matter what you have or if you're being fulfilled physically and material things or whatever. It's really about if you're not happy within yourself, you're never going to find that right relationship. You're never going to be on the right path. You have to be able to go into that self-love, that connection with self. Otherwise, you're going to keep making the same mistakes again. So going through it is a really important process.
Yeah, and like I said, there's no way around it but through it, and
Yeah.
hopefully, you just have enough love between you and that person, or you and that circumstance, or you and yourself, that you're willing to get all the way through it. And then I think the other thing that happens is people start it, then they realize how messy and what a great mistake they've made at whatever, and they want to judge it.
Right.
They don't get all the way through it, and then that they're just going to play it out again.
Exactly.
And it's
Yeah. I've been there many a times.
yeah,
Played it
yeah.
out again, going, what was I thinking?
It's important to, I find that part of it is not only in having self-love, but at some point in the cycle, and this is, I think, the point with Greg Braden too, is that you have to have compassion and
Mhm.
understanding, forgiveness, unconditional love with whoever was involved as well.
You
Like,
do.
once
That's
I realized the thing about my father, I actually had great compassion for him.
mhm.
And then because of that, I started to have more compassion for my mother, and then for myself, and then for all the partnerships I've had, and this most recent one, so it's like it brings a different level of taking ownership for the actions that we have. So a lot of times I've acted so unconsciously out of this pattern, like no matter how many people I can help, no matter how much good I could possibly do in the world, it hasn't spared me from hurting the people I love the most.
Mhm.
You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Which is really hard on me because I hate that. Like, um it's the thing that upsets me the most. It scares me the most. And so in the process though, what Greg Braden was saying, finally to come to this point, you not only forgive yourself and have compassion, but it starts to bring it forth, and you start to see through the other person's eyes. You start to feel through the other person's heart. You start to, and I'm just now starting to have that experience, and it's devastating. I mean,
Mhm.
I cannot tell you how hard it is to.
But through that whole process, we have compassion for one another, and even if things don't work out the way that we had hoped that it would, or because I had these big dreams of retiring with my husband and traveling the world and whatever, and it wasn't what was going to happen. But through that, there's a lot of treasure and there's a lot of gems, and and we just move to what is the next phase and what's the next level of our learning and our growth, which is a beautiful thing. And I'm with you. I think for me, the thing that has healed me the most through that process is being able to honor and have gratitude for the people in my life that have been the greatest teachers. And I could never thank them enough for the lessons that I've been able to learn through that, which is a beautiful thing. And I think again, it's coming back to choosing love, not fear. And I send a lot of love as much as I can. Some people I have a little easier time with than others to them as I move forward. And that's the important thing is really, I feel like the main part of this, and I keep saying it because I feel like it's so important and been a big part of my journey, is really sitting with that self and getting to know that self, because that's what's going to help you as you move forward to make wiser choices, to come out of being in that vibration of living from your pain body and the triggers in there than it would be from living from your heart space, living from that love body.
Well, yeah, I agree with all of that. And the thing that I had not that I underestimated as part of the healing process
Mhm.
is um, slowing down enough to
Mhm.
become present to the other person's
Mhm.
uh, pain. It's an entirely different type of healing.
Mhm.
Um, like it's easy for me to say, well, I'm not, I'm not going out of my way to be prejudiced. You know what I mean about something. And when we were in Venice, these people, the locals, wouldn't serve us at a particular restaurant
Mhm.
for being American or whatever. And and being on the receiving end, it didn't feel good. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't trade that for all the world,
Yeah.
because being on the receiving end of, you know, um, prejudiced, which, it was an invaluable experience. And now I know it in my heart. So it's one thing for me to walk through the world and say, oh, I'm not prejudiced, or I don't believe in prejudice. It's a whole nother, I have a whole different appreciation for it now, having had it happen in different circumstances. Well, what I'm saying about the relationship piece is, it's one thing to say, I love myself, not I love myself, but like, we go into self-love and unconditional love with ourselves, which is very important. Like we can't avoid not doing that. Like that's part of our evolution, right? But what I wasn't counting on, and how I got to this, was doing one thing that I do with my angels is I do soul letters to them. So I will call in the angels and I do automatic journaling and sit with that. And so I've really been trying to unravel stuff with this person or people in my life. And when I sit down to do a soul letter to that person, and I'm listening to them, like I'll say whatever I'm saying, but then I listen to them, it empathically, intuitively, soully, it helped me to experience something that I was missing.
Yeah.
And I just did that this week, but
That's crazy. I never thought.
It's so powerful. And sometimes it's not even what that person would consciously say to you, because their soul will say something sometimes with so much depth. And the closer the person is to their soul, the closer their words will resonate. And some people are just further away from their soul. This person that I was doing the soul letter with is very close to their soul, in general. And so I could hear her. I could hear her in a very different way. And it was humbling. I mean, it just took everything to a very different level of understanding, and still being able to, like, it actually took my love and understanding and compassion to a much deeper level than what I had done before. But I don't think I even could have done that unless I had enough unconditional love and acceptance for myself to even have sat and listened on a soul level with them. But it's changed my life. I'd never be the same.
Wow.
Because of it.
That's really very powerful. I haven't even thought about doing that, to do a soul level kind of letter. That would be really healing, because you're not on that
healing and haunting at the same time. I just don't even know what to do about it now. Like I'm just in a sitting place with it. But
yeah. Interesting.
It's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's profound. It's profound and it's humbling, and it evolves the soul in a way that I would have never known otherwise. And like I said, I think sometimes we're so in ourselves, and we're so thinking about ourselves and being kind of self-centered, whether it's positive or negative self-centeredness. I think that we just tend to live within ourselves. It's just our human nature in general, right? But when we can finally step out and be a compassionate witness to somebody else, I think sometimes that's when our soul evolves the most. And it's, like I said, it's been one of the greatest gifts of my life. It showed me things that I had I just didn't realize. I just couldn't see it until I finally, and it took me unraveling this much to even be able to be present on that level.
Which is really important, I think, through this whole conversation. I do want to go back and say, if somebody doesn't know what automatic writing is, or journaling, as you had mentioned it, that's when it's kind of a form of somewhat of a mediumship, where you're allowing spirit just to work through your hands. So if you don't understand what that was, that's about. But the interesting thing that I've loved about the whole progression of this conversation is the process you went through of allowing yourself to unfold all of the parts of you that needed to be heard, all the parts of you that needed to be felt and understood. And that's really what the process of healing is all about.
And then that gives you the foundation, finally, to be able to hear another person.
Yes.
To not make up a story, to not project, to not jump to conclusions, to not judge, to not criticize, to not feel guilty, to not blame, just all the stuff that goes on. It just all of a sudden it drops it into a very real
Right.
level. I really.
And I love one of the things Sharon said is that because she went through abusive relationship with her father, is that she's come to have compassion for him. And for my mom, I don't have a great relationship with her, and I've had to learn how to love her and have compassion for her too. And I think that's a part of our healing. So kudos for you, Sharon, for going through that. And we will thank our greatest teachers on the other side for sure, for all the wonderful lessons we got to learn while we were here together. Thank you so much for being here, Adrienne. I know that the beginning of this was really wonky. I'm really sorry. I've not had that wonky of a start, but it happens. I didn't ask you the most important question. I always start my show off with asking everybody, what keeps you reaching for your highest being, your highest self?
Love.
I love that. I would say that as far as I know you, that's
At the
it.
end of the day, I really don't care about anything else. And I know I'm not the best at it. I know I make a lot of mistakes at it. But at the end of the day, it's just like whether it's giving somebody something or whether it's
Mhm,
going to walk with them or sitting with whatever, it's
mhm.
that to me is at the end of the day, the only thing that's really important at the end of it all.
I agree with you. I am 100% in agreement with that. Totally. I will put the information up for you. You have a group called My Wild Magic. You also have a My Wild Magic on the Mighty Networks where you're doing a mentorship, or what do you call that?
Yeah, membership.
The membership, yeah, program. And so I'll have that all on there. And I do want to put a shout out that tomorrow is going to be my event with Marsha Johnson. It's free if you want to come to it. It's going to be a fun evening with mediumship, tarot readings, and orograph, which is fun. And I'm going to do one for Sharon because we have been missing each other. So if you're interested in that event, I'll put the link in this chat as well, or email me at joanne@reachtheunlimited.com. Somebody forgot that today and yelled at me. I couldn't get in because I got to bounce back, but put .com or it won't work. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you.
Well, I'm way interested in your event. It sounds fascinating. I'm going to join up for sure. Yeah.
It's going to be fun. Yes. I'm just stepping out there being me. So yeah, we're going to have fun. It's just going to be an evening with spirit and see where we go. And Marsha is amazing. And so you'll love her as well. So everybody just, to get the link, seating is limited. We don't want a really big crowd because we want it to be really intimate. So just email me and I'll send you the link. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you everybody for.
Thank you so much. Yeah, for having me.
Always love to have you on. And thank you everybody for all your chats and your comments and being here, and like the page and share if you can, and subscribe if you haven't. Did I get them all?
Yeah, you have all. Thumbs up. Give it a thumbs up. Yeah.
All this technical stuff. It's like, oh, and somebody had said, what is this channel about? I hate to keep you, but I need to address that. This is an interview format to bring many different people with many different ideas, topics of any sort to the audience, to just kind of help us explore and expand our beliefs, our ideas, because the more we learn, the more we're going to learn about who we are and what we like and what we want. So anyway, that's what this channel is about. It's just an interview format. I've got a bunch of people coming and I just open it up to all different kinds of interviews. So that's what we do. All right. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night, and I will see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.